Welcome back. All right, so number 4 draft picks. And this is where things get a little dicey. So you're going from 2006 to 2021. Well, the 2021 draft pick in fourth spot was Luke Hughes. It is really tough to rank Hughes because he hasn't really played in the NHL yet. So I did my best, but I will put an asterisk next to Luke Hughes because we don't really know yet. I mean, we know he should be excellent, right? Should be a really strong addition to that New Jersey blue line. Should be a natural. But at this point, there's kind of a incomplete when you're looking at trying to figure out where he would stand on this board. That being said, he's not at the bottom. So number 16 on this board from 2012. Yep, the 2012 draft strikes again. Griffin Reinhart. So Sam Reinhart was taken second overall in his draft. Griffin Reinhart was taken fourth overall. I was really excited about Griffin Reinhart. Again, I was a big Paul Reinhart fan growing up, and I thought, great, his kid, and he plays on the blue line. This should be exciting, and it just never worked. He went through a few different organizations, but never really found a footing in the National Hockey League, and now he's 16th on the board. And since it's from 2012, that means he's going to be on this board probably in 16th when I do this video again for years to come. Number 15 on the board from 2007, LA Kings draft pick here. And another defenseman as well. And I feel like I should also say that Thomas Hickey had a decent career. He did. The thing is, a number 4 overall draft pick, expectations are a little higher. Like if I was doing this with 19th or 20th overall picks, something like that, expectations would be higher. But as it is, Hickey in 2007 was a decent pick for the LA Kings, just doesn't end up living up to the expectations with the number 4 pick. Interestingly enough, I remember at the time he was picked, that was seen as an off-the-board pick and kind of a surprise that the Kings could have got him later. And his career, again, he had a decent career in the NHL, just not worthy of number 4 overall pick. At number 14, this is where I feel like Luke Hughes goes. So again, big ol' asterisk. I'll put 2 asterisks here. And this is why I'm probably going to stop with the number 4 draft pick. Just saying, probably going to stop with the number 4 and then mess around a little bit. And maybe do some all-time lists when it comes to draft picks. Because again, Luke Hughes, we don't know. We know that he should be a star in the NHL. Fine, I'll put more asterisks. How does that sound? But at this stage, we don't know whether or not Hughes is going to be a big star in the NHL or what he's going to do. See, I'm not going to put him at the bottom. I can't put him below Reinhart. And I think putting him above Hickey should be fine. But yeah, anything above 14 gets tough. And it's interesting because at 13, drafted by the Edmonton Oilers in 2016, Jesse Puljujarvi. And I admit, it's an imperfect system, right? And this is an example of how it's an imperfect system. To me, Luke Hughes hasn't played enough games to bump Puljujarvi down yet. Puljujarvi has had a couple of decent seasons here and there, of course. Moving on to Carolina. Currently, he's an unrestricted free agent at the NHL level anyways. And so, kind of up in the air. I have him ahead of Hickey and ahead of Reinhart, and only ahead of Hughes because Hughes barely has any games in the National Hockey League. If Hughes had played half the season, my guess is I'd have Hughes ahead of Puljujarvi. So again, it's an imperfect system, but it's fun. I enjoy doing list videos, and here we are, we're going through another list video. At number 12, and this one's tough too, because if he'd been healthy, I don't think he's anywhere near this low. But with the amount of time that Bowen Byram has missed since being drafted in 2019, concussion issues, and hopefully those are in the rearview mirror for good with him. Byram is an excellent defenseman. But again, when you look at his body of work, I felt like the guys who were 1 through 11 on this board end up 1 through 11 and he ends up at 12th. But I would not be surprised if next summer when I do this, Bowen Byram is potentially top 8, top 7, that kind of region. The potential with Byram is still off the charts. And so, yeah, he ends up 12th on the board today. And again, I know there's people who are just going to fast forward to the end anyways. That's what I assume. There's going to be people who just fast forward to the end and complain because that happens all the time with power rankings. So why not with list videos? Number 11 on the board. From 2014, Sam Bennett. 2014 draft was a really strong draft overall. Sam Bennett, a big part of that for the Calgary Flames. Sadly, while he was very good in the postseason, in the regular season, it wasn't quite as good. He ends up going to Florida. He's been better since arriving in Florida than he was in Calgary, at least during the regular season. Again, postseason, he was a beast in Calgary, the same as he's been for Florida. And so, yeah, Bennett ends up 11th on the board. There's potential for him to move up next season as well. You'll notice the 2006 draft pick hasn't showed up yet, so next year he comes off and the 2022 draft pick goes on. So, yeah, Bennett might move up just for that reason alone. Number 10, 2020 draft pick. Another one who I could see moving up this board in coming years. A bit of a sophomore jinx hit Lucas Raymond this year. I think Raymond's going to be fine. I think Raymond's going to, bounce back next season and should have a strong year. That being said, he's got 2 years in, and I felt like number 10 was the right spot for him. Raymond, good forward, part of what's being built by Steve Yzerman, and I've seen some complaints about how slow things are going with this rebuild for Yzerman, but he wants to do it right. Some teams try to build for playoffs and some try to build for Stanley Cup. And if you're trying to build for a Stanley Cup rather than just making the playoffs, you avoid those quick fixes and you do things a little bit different. And in Detroit's case, it's definitely been a slow build to this point. But again, I believe in Yzerman. I saw what he did in Tampa. It took a while in Tampa as well. And I think Raymond could be a big part of things in Detroit going forward. Number 9 on the board, another New Jersey pick too, from 2011. It's funny because the 2011 draft, I remember there being some surprise that Adam Larsson dropped down to 4. And that New Jersey, it was seen, was getting an excellent defenseman at number 4. Didn't really work out that well. He ends up being traded, of course, to Edmonton. Ends up getting taken by Seattle when they come into the league. And in Seattle, he's blossomed. Adam Larsson, right now, the way he's, well, not right now. Right now he's on holiday, obviously, or maybe working out. I don't know. Don't judge. But Adam Larsson this past season in Seattle was playing the way that he was expected to when he was drafted in 2011. It's taken a while, but he's good at both ends of the ice, smart player, good defenseman. Had a good run, honestly, in Edmonton towards the end there as well, but ends up going to Seattle, and he's well paid, and I think he's worth every penny for the Seattle Kraken to this point. So he ends up at number 9. We're through the first half of the board. All right, second half of the board. At number 8, drafted in 2010. Very up and down career. But Ryan Johansson ends up on this side of the board. Ends up number 8. He's had enough good seasons that I ranked him at number 8. He doesn't rank higher because there is some inconsistency in the results that we get with Johansson. But solid forward. The surprise I had was when Columbus traded him, they still needed depth down the middle, and they traded him for a defenseman. And yeah, I always thought that was odd, but Columbus does at times make odd decisions. So Johansson, of course, is going to play in Colorado this year. We'll see how things work in Colorado. It is quite possible he has a great year this year in Colorado. He will be given every opportunity to do that, and I wish him the best there. Number 7, the guy he was traded for. So drafted in 2013 by the Nashville Predators. This one surprised me too because at the time I thought, well, Nashville has a lot of defensemen. Drafting Seth Jones just seems odd because they already have a bunch of defensemen, but I'm always the one that says draft best player available. If they believe Jones was best player available, makes total sense. And then he gets traded for Johansson later, which is the kind of forward that I thought Nashville needed when they drafted Jones. Jones, of course, has a very expensive contract. Jones is playing in Chicago. And this past season wasn't fantastic for him. I don't know that there were any players that had great years for Chicago. The one guy who was kind of having a great year for Chicago was Max Domi, and they traded him. So I don't know how much of the poor play is on Jones. I don't know how much the poor play is just that the team that he's with is not very good. But at any rate, Seth Jones hasn't really reached the heights that were expected. And I feel like, 3-4 years ago, he was playing pretty well. I really liked Jones a lot. It really has not been a good last few years for him. Hopefully this year things bounce back for him a little bit. Chicago should at least be a little bit better. Maybe we see his numbers get better as well. Number 6 on the board from 2009, and it's a Thrashers magnet. So 2009. Evander Kane. Evander Kane, goal scorer. He has been pretty consistent when it comes to the goal scoring. He's had some down years here and there, sure, maybe, but generally you can count on 25 to 30 goals from him, I would say. He can hit 40, but Kane's had a decent career. He has bounced around. We know he's had issues that fans don't necessarily like. He's often in the news for reasons that aren't necessarily great for him, but at any rate, we're just talking about the on-ice product with Kane, and I think Kane is worthy of the number 6 spot. I'm fine with having Kane ahead of Jones and ahead of Johansson. Just based on the entirety of their careers, I would put Kane ahead of the other two. If you want to go the other way, you absolutely can. Number 5 on the board from 2018. The Ottawa Senators are on the board now. Who needs to win a draft lottery? Not Ottawa. Ottawa drafts Brady Tkachuk. So Matthew Tkachuk gets a lot of attention in Florida, rightfully so. Based on this past season with Florida, his previous year in Calgary, Matthew Tkachuk's a megastar. Brady Tkachuk is excellent. And when Brady Tkachuk was drafted, there were some scouts that felt he might have more or at least the same kind of offensive upside as brother Matthew. Brady Tkachuk is around that point per game mark. Could he have a 100-point season? Yes. If the Sens continue their progression this year like they did last year, I could see Tkachuk at least passing 90 points. And if he's playing with Stützle, I could see him threatening 100. So Brady Tkachuk at this point in time, I think is trending in the right direction. I'm perfectly fine with having him at 5. I think he's a star. Does a little bit of everything. And he's got some grit to his game because he's a Tkachuk. If your name's Tkachuk, you have to have some level of grit to your game or you're out of the family. It's just, I know it sounds mean, but that's the rules. Keith says, no, you're out. You're not gritty enough. Oddly enough, not related to gritty. So number 4 on the board from 2015, Toronto Maple Leafs. People are going to be ahead of me on this one because they'll know who it is. Mitch Marner. So I'm not in the camp of people that like to, throw shade at Mitch Marner and playoffs this and playoffs that. I think Marner's an excellent player. I don't know if the Leafs ever win a Stanley Cup with him there. I don't know if he's going to be a player that moves on and gets a Stanley Cup somewhere else. But regardless, talking about his regular season game, the guy is a points producer. He's one of the best passers in the National Hockey League. And so for me, I think Marner belongs at number 4 on the board. There are 3 guys that I could not argue Marner ahead of. But yeah, Marner at number 4 on the board. To me, that's the right spot for him. At number 3, a St. Louis draft pick. And from 2008, I know it's going to be one of the further back years. So, Alex Pietrangelo. Is there a defenseman who's more underrated over the last 10 years? Stanley Cup with St. Louis? Check. Stanley Cup in Vegas? Check. He was not a passenger for either of those Stanley Cups. Plays a lot of minutes, puts up points, doesn't end up winning Norris trophies as much as others, but I think he'll take those Stanley Cup rings over Norris trophies. So Pietrangelo, excellent player during his time in St. Louis, has been an excellent addition to the Vegas Golden Knights as well. I think there's zero regret on behalf of the Vegas Golden Knights in picking up Pietrangelo. There may be some regret in St. Louis regarding not keeping Pietrangelo, and others they did keep, but that's kind of how that works with the GM. You have to roll the dice. I understood why St. Louis did that, but yeah, Pietrangelo in St. Louis, and maybe if they hadn't kept one of the other defensemen that are there, who knows where St. Louis would be right now. I think Pietrangelo is probably underrated. Number 2 on the board from 2006. So this is the last time he'll be on this board. The Washington Capitals drafted Nicholas Backstrom. So I talked about Marner and how solid a passer Marner is. But Backstrom, more famous assists to Backstrom. Yes, Backstrom has definitely got more famous assists than Markstrom for one. And I would say more than Marner too. I guess you put Marner and Backstrom together, you get Markstrom. So there you go. I was an accidental combination on my part. But yeah, Backstrom, excellent. And here's, I can see an argument of, well, yeah, but Backstrom, he's played with Ovi, but Ovi's also played with Backstrom. So I sometimes think that assists are underrated by fans, and I don't care if they're primary or secondary. I think that assists are underrated. That goal scorer, and in Ovi's case, he scores from a spot all the time. The fact that Backstrom consistently hits him with those passes in the exact perfect spot, he deserves every ounce of recognition for that. And Backstrom's a pretty good player in his own right. Even when he's not on the same line as Ovechkin, he's been able to produce throughout his career. His career, it feels like, is winding down. There's some concern, obviously, with the hip going forward, coming off of hip surgery. He did come back. He didn't look quite the same this past season. Maybe he doesn't get back, but there's enough in his career that I believe number 2 is the right spot for him. And number 1 on the board from 2017, and of course I'm wearing a Colorado Eagles jersey in part because there's 2 Colorado magnets on this board. And yeah, from 2017, Cale Makar. So as I said earlier about the Raymond draft pick, Makar ends up being a pretty solid all-around pickup for the Colorado Avalanche when they don't win the draft lottery. And I remember there being some upset in 2017 that Colorado they can't win anything. And then they drafted Makar, who ends up being arguably right now the best defenseman in the National Hockey League. And I say arguably because there's always going to be an argument when you talk about the best defenseman in the NHL. But hey, don't worry, that video is going live. I made that video about a week ago, so I don't even remember what order they're all in. So when that video goes live, everybody's going to get upset. I would think a lot of people are going to get upset, but rankings are fun. So I do like doing the rankings. And Makar is highly regarded by me in terms of defensemen. And I do understand there's going to be people who want Backstrom or Pietrangelo ahead of Makar, but I think at this point Makar he is on a whole other level, and I hope he's healthy all season this year so we get a chance to see more of that brilliance from him on the Avalanche blue line. So there you go, number 4 draft picks. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.